Is it fair to say that this episode should have maybe come earlier than this point? Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name's Kevin, I'm a geek, you're watching Kevin the Geek, and this is the penultimate review of the second series of Torchwood. You may notice that I'm maybe not quite my normal kind of bubbly self to an extent. I'm a little bit under the weather at the moment. I've just come off doing a show week, and I think it might have taken a little bit more out of me than would normally be the case. I've been very under the weather, extremely fatigued and stuff. So apologies, but of course I'm still creating content for you guys. So, yes, we are talking today about the penultimate episode for Series 2, which is Fragments. Now, if you've seen my Doctor Who reviews, then you'll know that typically I count two-parters as, one review. But I believe in this case, with Fragments and Exit Wounds, although they feed into each other, they're so kind of separate in a way to them that I am treating them as two completely separate entities. And of course, you will find that it is unusually that this video is coming out on a Thursday as well. And the reason for that is ultimately because I needed to get Series 2 of Torchwood done before doing the Season 4 finale review for Doctor Who. I've had to add in an extra day in order to fit it in. So that's why that's happened. Yesterday was my review of Doctor Who and the episode Turn Left. The day before that was the episode of Torchwood Adrift. Coming up next week on the Tuesday, it will be Exit Wounds, which is the Season 2 finale of Torchwood, followed by, on the Wednesday, it will be the Doctor Who review of The Stolen Earth and Journey's End. So, this is an episode that is fundamentally a flashback episode. It is an episode that showcases how each of the Torchwood members that we have gone along with so far, minus Gwen, because obviously we've already seen how she got recruited in Torchwood, and also not including Susie. Although Susie is kind of referenced in this episode, in a very brief blink and you miss it kind of moment. The rest of the time we are focusing on Jack, Ianto, Toshiko, and Owen. And I'm going to do this video in kind of 4 different segments and kind of focus on each of the 4 individual aspects of it, and then briefly talk about that ending to this episode. So Jack's flashback, I do like the fact that rather than saying it was 10 years ago, 1500 years ago, whatever, I like the fact that they've gone it by the deaths, because at this point I think for Captain Jack, he of course is just completely timeless. And so is it fair to say to him, 100 years ago, 10 years ago, because what we would consider 100 years ago, that would be different to his perception maybe of 100 years ago. So I like that little touch there. And um, obviously we only really focus on the recruitment aspect of it, which is in Victorian Cardiff, which is presumably, I can't remember if they said an actual date in the episode, but at the very least, it won't have been a huge amount of time following the events of the episode Tooth and Claw from Doctor Who, which is of course where Queen Victoria met the Doctor and fended off the werewolf, which led to her creating Torchwood. Now, as a general rule and a general concept, um, I liked what they did with Jack, but it wasn't really one that I was necessarily that interested in. I'll be completely honest, because we've spent so much time with Jack, particularly in Doctor Who and in Torchwood as well, that his history for me personally in this regard, what got him involved in Torchwood, I was just like, yeah, okay, it's nice to know, but we always knew that he was waiting around for the Doctor, and so it just felt a slightly more fleshed out version of what we had already kind of known up until this point. It was entertaining, and I liked what they did with it. It's interesting bringing back the blowfish that you saw in the season 2 opening episode, but otherwise, it was all right. Next up, we have Toshiko, and this one I would probably say was it's either very closely tied with Owen's flashback, or arguably slightly more or slightly less emotional than Owen's. I think when you break it down, I think it depends on your own personal perception of it. It's a shame, I think, that Toshiko got recruited in such a horrible way, but it also kind of makes sense for her as the character. Um, you know, her going to the lengths of stealing military secrets. When I was first watching it, obviously the first time watching it play out, I was just thinking, this isn't Toshiko. This isn't the Toshiko that we know and that we love. And then the moment that her mum got brought out, and it was clear that she was being used and manipulated and blackmailed effectively to make this weapon, this sonic modulator, by forcing her to do it because they've kidnapped her mother. That's awful. That's really awful. But it just goes to show that Toshiko's intelligence, which we had already kind of known for a long time with Torchwood, but her technical knowledge, as Jack kind of pointed out, this was something that didn't work. The plans don't work. And she naturally fixed things as she was going along. And that sums Toshiko up. She is a problem solver at the end of the day. And I like Toshiko as a character. Obviously, knowing what happens in the next episode, it's a shame that Toshiko either never got to the point of being able to conclude her 5 years that she promised to Jack and was able to leave on a high. But at the same time, had that been the case, that she would have been offered now the chance to leave, I don't think that she would have done. I think Toshiko loves her job too much. I think that she loves the people that she works with. They are all she's got. I don't think she could go back to a normal life after Torchwood. Ianto's flashback, I feel it was poorly handled. That's the best way I could probably describe it. It felt like they used it to rewrite the history between Jack and Ianto. Because realistically, Up until the season 1 finale with the little kiss bit in that episode, followed by the sort of asking of Yanto out at the start of series 2. From my memory, I cannot think of any moment in season 1 where there was this sort of flirty underlying kind of sexual tension between Jack and Yanto. So the whole kind of flirting back and forth, and I love the coat, I love the suit, where they roll on the floor laughing, and then you have that moment where they are looking at each other and they sort of giggling and stop giggling while as they look into each other's eyes, kind of thing. I thought that was stupid, personally, and that's just my personal opinion. I like Owen, Jack and Yanto as a couple. I do think they work well together, but rewriting it in a way that forces them to make it seem like they'd always had this when they've never shown anything realistically properly until season 2. I think that's pretty poorly written in my personal opinion. Um, Although it was quite interesting to see how the pterodactyl came to be. That was slightly interesting there. But there was just something about the Yanto flashback that it didn't interest me. It really didn't. And again, maybe that's similar to Jack's because we do kind of know a little bit more about um, Yanto's history. The fact that he worked for Torchwood London, the fact that he obviously had this girlfriend who, after this point we then learned, was partially converted into a Cyberman. So yeah, there's there's just something off for me in this one personally. Finally, we had the flashback for Owen, and this is arguably, the most emotional one to watch. And in a way, I'm glad that they left this one to last. Um, my personal opinion, I think this is the most emotional one, slightly more so than Toshiko's, but it's very close. But I think the reason for me why it is more emotional than the rest is because in reality, the previous three, it is showing the characters that we have known for the entirety of this 2-season run. For Owen, this is a different Owen. This is not just showing how Owen came to be recruited to Torchwood. This is showing what made Owen cold, calculating, methodical, brutal, not caring at times. It's because of the fact that he had something wonderful. And it's insane to think that in what, maybe 3 minutes of screen time, we got a true sense of what the relationship was between Owen and Katie. And for Owen to be this doctor who is so determined to save lives that he is persistent in pushing for more answers simply beyond the earliest case of early onset Alzheimer's in medical history. That shows you what kind of a Dr. Owen has always been. He is determined and wants to do everything he can to provide some sort of resolution to whatever ailment a person has. For me, watching those scenes of the memory loss was particularly hard because my nan suffered from dementia. So that, in obviously in my rewatch today, that just brought back how difficult it is when someone you love suffers from that memory loss to the point that, as Katie had in this episode, where you can't remember someone's name. That's the worst feeling in the world. But as Torchwood goes, an alien got involved in the form of a tumour, which killed the doctors, the surgeons, Katie herself, when they tried to remove it, when they believed, of course, that it was just a tumour. And the pain that Owen has to go through, knowing that he has lost someone, he has not been able to do anything himself to save her. That is what I believe triggers his downfall into the Owen that we know. And I think the fact that they chose to reutilize the Owen's death theme motif, the piece of music, in a number of instances through this flashback montage. Yeah, that piece of music obviously has been used so far when it's relating to the death of Owen. And the reason I think it's particularly poignant is because of the fact that, in a way, a part of Owen has died along with Katie. And we've seen glimpses of that Owen kind of coming through in this second season. And I think that has come from him probably stemming from actually the Diane situation in series 1. That was the first time since Katie that he, or at least that we know of, it's the first instance that he's kind of got close to having genuine feelings for someone again. And in this series, in this second series, I believe he genuinely has begun to see Toshiko in a different way. And that, again, has sort of rekindled part of him in that regard as well. And so, after we saw the flashback and everyone managed to get out relatively safely, but, minus a few injuries, it is revealed that the bomb explosion which set off all these flashbacks, they were from Captain John Hart, who you probably remember from the season 1 opening. Nicely tying up and teasing the proper season finale. And Gray, who obviously has been kind of mentioned in brief in the episode Adam in season 2. And I remember that cliffhanger thinking, holy crap, what's coming up in this next episode? And it made me excited to watch it. Obviously, I have seen that episode, and next week I'm going to review that. So make sure you stick around for that episode. But overall, I feel that this episode, it just came a bit too late. It's nice to get a backstory for a lot of these characters. But especially Owen and especially Tosh, I would have liked to have got this backstory earlier. And maybe you could have dedicated, a longer amount of time to it and really fleshed it out even further. But it's just a pretty good episode, I'm not going to lie. It is one that is enjoyable, and I can go back and watch it. There's some episodes I just can't rewatch, and I will skip them. And me doing them as part of the reviews has probably been the first time I've watched them in a long time. But yeah, I enjoyed this episode. What are your thoughts to Fragments? Please drop your thoughts in the comments below, and please subscribe to the channel if you are new to check out all of my other Doctor Who and Torchwood related content, amongst many other stuff as well. For today, my name is Kevin, I am a geek, and you've been watching Kevin the Geek. Goodbye.